Does fishing even matter? Why do we fish? Is it even worth it? Shouldn't we just leave it to the pastor or the professionals? Why do we fish? If you weren't here last week, we're in part 2 of our series called Go Fish. And I love this series, and it's all about fishing. And in case you haven't noticed, it's probably not just the real fishing that these guys did or didn't do that well the other day, but it's about more than that. And if it's your first time to church, you might be wondering, what is fishing all about? And I think fishing can literally be as simple as walking across the room and engaging in someone's story and finding ways to meaningfully impact their lives. And that's for all of us, whether you're a Jesus follower or not, whether this is your first time to church or not. This call to fish and to make a difference in people's lives is for all of us. And for those of us that are Jesus followers, we tend to think that Jesus makes our life better and that Jesus makes us better at life. And so for that reason, sharing the message about Jesus is an important part of fishing. But whether you're a Jesus follower or not, that to fish, to walk across the room and engage in someone's story is an important part that for every single one of us that we can do. And last week, I loved last week's program, and it was all about, Rhiannon had an amazing story, and the music was great, and I loved the one thing that Wes shared, and it stuck with me, and he said that every single one of us is perfectly positioned to fish, to engage in someone's life exactly where we are, with what we're struggling with what's going on in our life right now. And I love the little drama that these guys did beforehand, because I feel like sometimes that's us. We wonder, why fish? Why even bother? Shouldn't we just leave it to Wes and the pastor and the professionals? And so in our time together, we want to ask a question. And the question that we want to ask is this: why fish? And I'm extremely excited about sharing today because there's a few reasons. One of them is that we're actually going to watch a movie today. So if this is your first time in church and you wonder what people do inside church, we literally just watch movies all the time. Not really, and we're not going to watch a whole movie, but there's a short clip in a movie that's my favorite movie of all times, my favorite part of the movie. And the reason I want to show it is because in this talk about why fish, I feel like I had to be real with you guys. And this movie, it's not a Christian movie, it's just a movie. And this movie, it's probably impacted my decision to fish and my understanding of why fishing is important more than any other thing that I've experienced. So if the video is playing, then, actually before you play that demo, I feel like I just need to give a bit of background. So the reason, actually I love movies, certain kind of movies. I don't like sad movies that much. But I love movies that makes you think, and inspirational movies. But one thing that I can't stand and that I don't get is when people watch a movie more than once. Like, I honestly don't get it. Like, if you know Mufasa is going to die, right? Like, why? You don't need to watch Lion King 19 and a half times to know that Mufasa is going to die. And I'm sure every single one of us we have troubled childhoods as a result of that moment. But it was same with Forrest Gump. Man, like, if you've heard what his mama said about life and chocolates, every time you see a chocolate wrapper, you're going to think of Forrest Gump. You don't need to watch a movie more than once. But this movie is my favorite movie. I've actually seen it probably at least 7 times. And hopefully, today we'll explain why. And so if you guys are ready for the video, shot demo.
The Almighty says this must be a fashionable fight. It's drawn the finest people. Where is thy salute?
For presenting yourselves on this battlefield. I give you thanks.
This is our army. To join it, you give homage.
I give homage to Scotland. And if this is your army, why does it go?
We didn't come here to fight for them.
Oh, the English are too many.
Sons of Scotland, I am William Wallace.
William Wallace is 7 feet tall.
Yes, I've heard. Kills men by the hundred. And if he were here, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his arse. I am William Wallace. And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight?
Right? Against that? No! We will run!
And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Now we're all ready to go to war. But at the start of that speech, William Wallace makes this statement, and he says, "You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do with that freedom?" And I love that, because that's exactly what Wes shared last week, without him probably even realizing it, is that as we talk about fishing, and as we come and we say, this is our fight, that we don't fish to become free men. We don't fish to earn God's approval. We don't fish to earn God's love. We don't do all of this so that we can get into God's good books, or that somehow He can free us from things that we are struggling with, that we're already free, that God already loves us as much as He could possibly love us. And so we come, when we talk about fishing, as free men. So the question is this: what will we do with that freedom? And then, as I was thinking about this speech, I've had plenty of times to think about it. It was actually in the shower one day, because we all know every great revelation comes when you're in the shower or when you're mowing the lawn. But I thought about, what was it that, it's great, we get the music in the background and we can get all psyched up. But what was it that caused the Scottish troops to actually turn around from fleeing from the British Army to turning around and fighting and giving their lives? And so this is what William Wallace says. He says, fight and you may die, run and you'll live at least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom? And as I thought about it, the penny dropped, and I realized that every single one of us have the same choice every single day, that we have a choice whether we're going to engage in life and live fully, whether we're going to one day on our deathbeds, whether we're going to regret the life, or whether we're going to know that hey, we've lived a life worth living. Or will we also be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance to come back here and start living a life worth living? And as I reflected on this, I realized that as we engage with life, that we're all dying to whatever it is that we are spending our lives upon. That we've got this limited time on earth, and that we're all every day dying to whatever it is that we're spending our lives upon. Whether it's what we give our time to, or our money, or our energy, or our passion, our love, our resources, whatever it is that we're investing our lives in, these are the things that we are living for. And so we're all dying to whatever it is that we are living for. See, a lot of people aren't sure what they're willing to die for. And I used to be one of those people until I realized that every day I'm dying to whatever it is that I'm actually spending my life on. And so my point today is not to tell you what you should be spending your life on, what you should be doing, or any of that. I think one of the greatest privileges that we have as humans is the power to choose. We get to choose the course that our lives want to take. And so you can make that decision for yourself. But the question that I want to ask, and that was asked of me, is my life making a difference? Am I going to be one day be able to say that I've lived a life worth living? And the good news is that whether you're a Jesus follower or not, that Jesus has come to offer us a life worth living, that there is something that we can do that will guarantee that we'll have the maximum impact that we can possibly have, that we'll be able to be on our deathbed and say that we have spent our time wisely. And that thing that Jesus offers to us is the opportunity and the invitation to fish, to move across the room, to step into someone else's story and engage with them, to somehow add value to every single person that we meet. In the year 1732, there was this British landowner, and he lived in the West Indies, and he had between 2,000 and 3,000 slaves. And back then, slavery was it's still common, but it was legal. And so he had all these slaves, and he just decided he was done with God and religion. He wanted nothing to do with it. That no preacher or pastor or anyone was ever going to come and talk to him or his family or these slaves about Jesus. There were two young Germans in their 20s, so they were my age, the age of a few people in this room, and they decided that this can't be right. that not everyone in this room, but some people in this room, but that this can't be right. We can't have 2,000 to 3,000 people living a life without knowing the hope that Jesus offers. And so they knew the only way for them to go and make a difference in those lives was to sell themselves as slaves. And that's what they did. They sold themselves as slaves for the rest of their life to that British landowner. And before they left, I'm sure they had all sorts of questions like, is fishing even worth it? Is it wise? Is the sacrifice really necessary? And as they sort of left, as the ship parted with their families, they were all crying, and the community was sad, and these two young men were leaving, and as they looked at their families, they sort of linked arms, and they said this. They said that, this is not it. Sorry, the next one. Not this one. They said, may the lamb that was slain receive the reward for his suffering. May the lamb that was slain, referring to Jesus who died so that we could be connected, so we can have a relationship with him. May he receive the reward for his suffering. And so the question that all of this is asking to us, and that was the previous slide, is this: what are we living for? And is what we are living for worth dying for? See, history is filled with men and women who've taken up this cause and have actually invested their life to make a difference. And Jesus himself said these words. He said, if we can find, that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. That it's actually when we give our lives to others, when we sacrifice ourselves, when we spend ourselves for the cause of Jesus and in the lives of others, that's when our life bears much fruit and we live a life worth living. And so every single one of us have this opportunity, and the thing is, we have no idea what hangs in the balance of our decision to go fish. The early followers of Jesus, they had no idea what hung in the balance. When Paul and Peter and John and all those followers of Jesus, when they started sacrificing and proclaiming this message about Jesus, they had no idea what hung in the balance of their decision to go fish. And the truth is that we hung in the balance, that Gracegate, this community, and every single one of us hung in the balance of their decision to go fish. And my question is that who is hanging in the balance of your decision to go fish? Who is hanging in the balance? Which community, which person's life can be transformed by you walking across the room and investing in someone's story? I I thought we could end with a passage of that sort of explains this. But as I thought about it, I realized that there may be some of us in this room that we may be thinking, hey, like, I know fishing is important, and I know it's good to invest our lives into, but how do we do it? Like, I'm not a pastor. I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the things. I've got a past. Like, I've got questions and doubts about God myself. How do I fish? And so I thought, instead of just exploring why fish, it's important to on our day-to-day basis, how do we actually do it? What do we do to make a difference? And there's this passage found in the book of Acts. And if this is your first time to church, the book of Acts, it's pretty much a travel journal. It's a recording where this guy, Luke, who is a doctor, he records what happens to the early followers of Jesus after Jesus lived and died and went back to heaven. And so he records what happened with these early followers of Jesus as they just went about doing their day-to-day life. And there's this interesting story that I'm just going to summarize. You can read it for yourself. It's in Acts 3 and 4, and I'm just going to summarize it, and we can look at a couple of verses together. But the thing that I want us to get, and the thing that I think is going to be so clear from this passage is this. Sorry, the one before. That you already have the very thing that you need to go fish. And I'm going to reveal, actually, I'm not going to reveal. I think the text is going to reveal what that thing is, and it's going to make fishing accessible for all of us. And so what happens, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and Peter and John, 2 early followers of Jesus, they walk up to the temple to pray. They were Jewish men, that's what they did, 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And then there's this guy, this beggar, and he's lame. So he's never walked before, and this beggar is standing there asking them for money. And so Peter and John, they go up to the temple to pray, and this guy approaches them and asks them for some money. And this is what they say. Peter says, I don't have silver or gold, but what I do have, I give you. I don't have silver or gold, but what I do have, I give you. In the name of Jesus of Christ of Nazareth, get up and walk. And we'll have a look what happens next. But I can so relate to it, and I wonder if anyone else can as well, that the things we don't have, the list somehow seems endless, that we might not be a pastor, we don't have a theology degree, we don't have all the answers about God, we can't explain God from a philosophical point of view, we don't always have the answers, we've got a past, or we feel like we don't have a past, and we don't have a story to tell, and our list of don't haves is often like a mile long, and we feel like what we do have is so little. And I love what Peter and John did, because they also didn't have certain things, but what they do have, what they had, they gave. And they said, in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, get up and walk. And the amazing thing happens where Peter actually lifts this guy up and he starts walking. And he's super excited. He's like the coolest thing ever. Like, he can walk. And he starts telling everyone about it. And soon, like, a crowd sort of gathers around Peter and John as they see this guy that was lame start walking. And Peter uses this opportunity and he says, hey, it wasn't us. It wasn't me. Like, there's nothing special about me. It's Jesus that can bring life and transformation in your situation. And it's him that healed this man. And the religious leaders at the time, they didn't like it because they were the ones that crucified Jesus. And so they arrest Peter and John, and the next day they start questioning them. And so here we're going to pick up the story where these guys, so it's the high priest, the previous high priest, and 2 other important guys. So these are the hot shots, the big guns. They start questioning Peter and John as they proclaim this message that, hey, it was Jesus who healed this man. And so this is what they say or actually before that, this is what Luke records for us. He says, when they observed the boldness of Peter and John and realized that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were amazed and recognized that they had been with Jesus. I love that verse because so often I feel uneducated, I feel untrained, I feel like I don't have the right answers. But it's funny because when we're in the presence of Jesus, suddenly he qualifies us. He qualifies us for things that we thought we couldn't do. And when Jesus qualified them, the fact that they weren't educated or trained suddenly didn't matter anymore. And so this is what these religious leaders then asked Peter and John as they talk to them. So they say, what should we do with these men? For an obvious sign has been done through them, clear to everyone living in Jerusalem, and we cannot deny it. But so that this doesn't spread any further among the people, let's threaten them against speaking to anyone in this name again. Let's threaten them not to speak about Jesus again. So they called for them and ordered them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. And often that's the message of the culture that we live in today, that you can believe in Jesus, you can go to church, you can sing songs about Jesus, but don't speak about Jesus. Don't assume that Jesus is the way that we can connect with God. And I love, and this is the crux of our whole talk today, and I love how Peter and John respond. And this is what they say. So Peter and John answered them, and they say, whether it's right in the sight of God for us to listen to you rather than to God, you decide. For we are unable to stop speaking about what we have seen and what we have heard. We are unable to stop speaking about what we have seen and what we have heard. See, Peter and John, they had a past. Just before this, they denied Jesus. They betrayed him. They had questions, I'm sure. They stopped believing when Jesus died, that Jesus was actually the Son of God. I'm sure they had questions. They couldn't explain like how God works. They didn't have all the answers. They probably didn't know why good things happen to bad people, why God allows evil in the world. They probably had the same questions that we do today. But they weren't called to explain everything. I'm sure they had 100 questions themselves, but simply they were called to speak about what they had seen and what they had heard. That somehow going fishing is not about trying to convince someone that Christianity is the right way, that somehow like going fishing is not about telling someone that you need to believe this or else, that it's simply speaking about what we have seen and what we have heard. And sometimes our list of don't haves, the things that we don't have going for us, seems a mile long. And the things that we do have seem so insignificant. But the thing is, every single one of us have that something that we need to go fish. And you and I have a story, and that is all we need to be able to fish. That our story, that as we own the story that we're living in, whether it's our past, whether God has brought us out of a life of addiction, whether He's journeyed with us through pain and suffering, no matter what the thing is, but chances are that if you're a follower of Jesus, or even if you're not, then there is something that you have seen that God has done in your life. And our mandate, our whole thing of fishing is not about explaining everything about God, but it's just about sharing what you have seen and what you have heard. I don't even know where I am on my notes right now. But I think right now, we're going to end off today. And there's something powerful that was shared with us this week. And Nicole has actually shared her story with us. And last week we listened to Rhiannon's story. And I love this part of the program because actually like this is where we see how it's actually the people who engage in our lives are the ones that change and transform us. That it's not the pastor, it's not the people that are trained and qualified, but the people that as we engage with each other's stories, that's where real transformation and life happens. So take a moment and we'll listen to Nicole's story. It's only a short video, I think.
Hey, my name is Nicole. Some of you here may know me. So some of my interests are, of course, my kids and sunshine, which we don't have much of, unfortunately. I'm here to share my story with you today. Everything happens for a reason. How many times have you heard that? Life throws curveballs your way and things don't always go as you've hoped or dreamed. People get sent on your path and afterwards you don't even know why. Until you sit back and realize and reflect, you can see the real meaning of them being there and why things happened the way they did, because everything really does happen for a reason. I've had losses, struggles, and uphills to climb, yet God has always sent someone on my path to make the journey a little bit easier. During a rough patch in my life, God unexpectedly sent a loving couple on my way. They showed me that the perception of Christianity that I had put in my head was not real. There was something real to believe in. There was a God that I could depend on and really, truly believe in. They helped me to see that I was taking things in my own life for granted and that I needed to appreciate them They turned things that were spiraling downhill to go shooting for the stars. If it wasn't for the late nights on those couches of theirs in their lounge, I truly believe that my faith would not be where it is now. A few years down the line, I found myself in a life or death situation on the operating table. Red lights flashing, alarms beeping, and again I think it was my angel in disguise, my special doctor, that fought so hard to keep me alive and on this earth. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here today. As many of you know, I am a mum to my miracle, walking, talking miracle, Damien, and my rainbow child, Abigail. They show me every day that God is real and God has his hand over our life and everything that happens in our lives every single day. In 2015, we immigrated to New Zealand, and again, God was at his good work. He didn't give us many options of houses to choose from when we came here in the short time frame we had. But as it may have been, I landed in a house, 2 houses down from another South African. If it wasn't for her and the way she took me in under her wing, I'm sure that the process of immigration would have been much harder and I would not have settled and adjusted as well as I did with my husband and 2 young kids at the time. Earlier this year, I joined the Gracegate team, and I wouldn't exchange these guys for anything in the world. They have showed me what life is about. Every one of these guys and girls have been on this faith journey with me and walked beside me to make my journey more fun, more meaningful, and sure it is easier. I've come to learn that God is always working in our lives. He always has a plan and he's always sending someone across your path to make your journey easier too. You never know when you could be that person to someone else, so don't be afraid to go fish.
I love that because it's the person across the road. It's the couple that spend late nights with her on the couch. It's the everyday, ordinary people that decided to walk across the room and engage in Nicole's story that changed her life for the better. And you and I can be that. The thing that God has brought us out of can be the thing that can inspire someone else's story. Maybe it's not even the thing we've already walked through. It's still the thing we're journeying through in our life right now, the struggle, the thing that we feel like we don't have figured out. Maybe that's the exact thing that someone needs in their story right now. And so I want to close off today, and I want to end the talk just by bringing together some of the things that we've chatted about. And I want to do it with another quote by William Wallace. And before he died, he died after living this life of purpose, this life of making a difference, he said this. He said, "Every man dies, but not every man truly lives." And I think the question that's been asked of every single one of us here is what are we living for? And is what we're living for worth dying for? So why do we fish? Why do we walk across the room? Why do we do all of this? There's a guy, Maximus, sorry, not this slide yet, shot demo. There's a guy called Maximus in the movie Gladiator, and he says this: what we do in this life echoes into eternity. And I love that, because is when we go fish, when we invest our lives in other people, then there is nothing that is as guaranteed to make a difference in people's lives, not only in this life, but also for all eternity. That as we spend our lives investing in people's stories, we get to make a difference, and our lives get to echo into eternity. And I was asked yesterday, how do I fish? What do I think fishing is all about? And the more I think about it, the more I wonder if we overcomplicate it sometimes, that maybe fishing is as simple as walking across the room, engaging in someone, connecting with someone in a meaningful way, and seeking to make someone's life better. That as we engage in people's stories, that somehow in those moments of connection, Jesus will just leak out. Jesus has a habit of when people connect, when we invest in each other's story, and those moments of love and grace and truth and mercy and forgiveness, that's where Jesus is found. That in those moments of connecting with each other in a meaningful way, we can make a difference. And honestly, I get to engage with some of these radiators, and I'm blown away every time I see the potential that they have in their life, the stories that their lives are still going to tell. And it's the same for every single one of us. We get to connect with people in a meaningful way, to walk across the room, to connect with their stories, and to somehow weave our lives into the fabric of their stories. And it's in those moments of connection that I think Jesus has found, and His grace and His mercy and His love has a way of just expressing itself. And so if this is you today, if you say, man, I want my life to matter, then I want to encourage all of us to join hands with the early followers of Jesus and start living a life that is poured out and invested into other people's stories, and to link arms with those two young Germans who gave their lives for the cause of others. And as we connect, as we connect with each other in a meaningful way, that beautiful things and things that are of God will just happen. That walking across the room and going fishing can be as simple as connecting two stories and two lives together. And so I'm just going to close us off in a prayer, and we'll end with a song. And it's been such a privilege just like exploring this as well with you guys. And I hope that if there's anything that we can take out of it today, is that we'll remember that our life will make an eternal difference when we fish. That there is nothing as guaranteed to make a difference in someone's life now and for all eternity when we invest our stories into theirs and share with them the hope and the love and the passion that Jesus has for them. So I'm just going to close off with a prayer. And God, we just want to thank you for today. We want to thank you that you're part of our stories, God, that as we connect with each other, that you'll find a way to express yourself, God, that as we just walk across the room and care about each other, as we love one another, that you will find ways to express yourself in love and in mercy and in grace, God. I pray that you give us the wisdom and what to do, God, that as we were challenged, as our lives are telling a story, that it will tell the story that you've designed us to tell, that we will pour our lives into someone else's story, and that our lives will echo into eternity, God. God, I pray that you give us the love to just walk across the room and just weave ourselves into the fabric of each other's lives, whether it's someone across the oceans, whether it's someone across the room, or whether it's someone in our neighborhood, God, someone at work, that we would just walk across the room and engage and just look to add value to their life and connect with them in a meaningful way. And God, I thank you that in this process, that we get a life of purpose, a life that will make a difference, God, and a life that is lived for you. God, I pray that you bless us on this journey, and you help us, you encourage us, you strengthen us, and you teach us how to do all of this, God, for your name's sake, God, so that you can be made great, that your love can spread in this world. And we thank you, God, in Jesus' name.